Hello, everyone. It's Will, and I'm back with another tarot reading. Today, we're going to ask the question, what is next for you in your love life? This will be an open reading and a general reading, but specifically about the area of love, romance, relationships. I have chosen three decks: the Fyodor Pavlov Tarot, Terra, Volatile, and Tarocchi by Mr. Friborg. I've pulled out the major arcana for each of these decks. Now what I'm going to do is shuffle them and pull a significator for each one. You will choose your significator based on what you're drawn to, what you think best represents your current situation, and I'll do a reading with each of these. So let's start with the Fyodor Pavlov Tarot. And as I said, I have shuffled these, but let's give them another good shuffle here and think about the question, what's next for you in your love life? What's next for you in your love life? And we have Temperance, the angel of temperance. Okay, for group 2, Terra Volatile. If I get a jumper, we'll just use the jumper as the significator. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's the Crossroads, which is number 6 of the major arcana. So this card is replacing the Lovers, right? I don't know if you know about Terra Volatile. With Terra Volatile, there are additional cards beyond the regular major and some of the minors too, and the court cards. And I've got the Crossroads in here at the moment. So rather than the Lovers, number 6, though, of the major arcana. Okay. And finally, group 3, Tarocchi by Mr. Friborg. This is more of a pip deck, which I really do love. Justice. Justice is the third option. So let's talk just a moment about these three significators. If one of them is already calling to you, I would suggest just go with that one. But if you're at all undecided, let's talk about them a moment. Temperance, I would think maybe if you're in a situation where you feel like you have been healing or need to heal, like maybe it's after a breakup, or there's something that you have been dealing with trying to fix in your life, and you feel like before you could have a relationship with someone, that needs to be repaired, Temperance might be your card. Notice how Temperance is looking to the past, right? And some people interpret the way that the angel of temperance is pouring the water as being kind of transformative, like doing a kind of self-exploration or spiritual alchemy, if you want to get into that kind of a thing. Some kind of growth and healing after something painful, like a great loss or great transformation. It's the card, of course, that comes immediately after card 13 of the major arcana, the Death card. The Crossroads is very interesting because the Lover's card in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck tends to be interpreted by people often about or in terms of love relationships, right? That seems obvious. An older version of that card had more of a depiction or interpretation about ambivalence and having a choice to make and being unable to decide between them. And so this version of card 6 of the major arcana in Terra Volatile is hearkening back to that older version of this card, pre Rider-Waite-Smith, right? So you're at a crossroads. Which way should you turn? You can see there are two paths here and signposts indicating which way to go. And this young person looks like they've chosen a path, but they're also looking back to the left, to the past, maybe wondering, is this the right path that I have chosen? What would have had to happen in my life previously for me to take this other path instead? So, if you feel like you're at a crossroads, if you feel like you don't know which direction to take in your love life right now, the ways are open before you, and you're like, I don't know, then this would probably be a good choice for you. Finally, we have Justice, which in this deck is number 8 of the major arcana, although as we know in decks that follow the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition, it usually appears as number 11. This deck, again, is hearkening back to pre-Rider-Waite-Smith tradition. So we have a figure seated with wings suggesting an angel. They've got a sword in their right hand. Notice that in this depiction, it does not go straight up. It is very, very, very slightly tilted to the left, right, like to the past, suggesting that in order to make a proper or a just decision or judgment about someone, maybe we need to consider what has happened to them, what kind of circumstances they've been in the past. Notice also the scales are not completely evenly balanced. This figure is clearly carefully weighing a decision of some kind, and they're weighing the evidence, considering the evidence, but they are maybe tipping the scale a little bit too, maybe so that how do I say this? To consider all things, not just totally rational rules or law, right? In order to make not just the right decision, but a just decision, if that makes sense. So, if you feel like you have a decision to make and you're trying to use your head and maybe your heart is getting involved and you're thinking about the past, or maybe you feel like you want to make sure whatever decision you make, you will be able to live with it and you will be able to look back and say, I did that responsibly, then I think this would be a good card for you to choose. So I will put the timestamps below and I will see you in your reading. Please choose Temperance, the Crossroads, or Justice. See you there. Hello, Group 1, and welcome to your reading. You chose the Fyodor Pavlov Tarot with Temperance as your significator card. I have shuffled all of the cards back into the deck, and now I'm going to continue shuffling while I think about the question and the Temperance card that you chose, and then we'll do a reading and see what we can get. The question, of course, is what's next for you in your love life? And because you chose Temperance, I'm thinking that maybe there's some healing that has been happening or that you feel needs to happen. A couple other things about Temperance that come to mind are in many versions of that card, particularly older Marseille versions, The figure, the angel, is pouring liquid, water most likely, from one vessel to another, and doing it in a way that defies the laws of gravity. So we can think of Temperance as a figure who is doing the impossible, something that shouldn't actually happen, is happening, right? Almost in a kind of magical way. So that would be something else to consider. Do you feel like love is impossible for you? Maybe that, like a relationship, a romantic relationship feels like just totally impossible, but could it just happen anyway? That would be something to consider. Another detail I consider with Temperance is, it comes right after the Death card in the order of the major arcana. And so I think about patience, not just healing, but like healing is slow. Healing after a death or loss or transformation or even a transition of some kind takes a long time. And so maybe you've been very patient in love, patient with partners, or patient in trying to find a partner, patient with dating, and maybe your patience is running thin. That would be something to consider here. Okay, I think those are shuffled enough. Let's knock on them, cut them, and I'll lay out my spread. I'll lay them out face down, and then we will flip them. I find that I get better results when I do it this way rather than having them all face up from the beginning. It slows things down a little, I think, doing it this way. In a good way. I mean, I think it's good. Because I'm able to draw more out of each card and slowly recognize connections that I feel like I might otherwise not see if I just had them all face up from the beginning. All right, so we have 9 cards laid out in this spread I have devised. Let's see what we get. What's next for you in love? So Page of Cups. Well, that makes me think of a new relationship. The Page of Cups is doing something new. It's a new beginning. It's cups, so it's emotions, feelings, relationships. That's quick and easy. We can return to this card once we are able to put it into context with the rest of the cards. But the first thing that comes to mind here is the possibility of a new relationship. If it's not a new relationship, it could be experiencing a new feeling, something you haven't felt before or in a long time. It can also mean you are becoming more sensitive to your feelings, your emotions, or those of others. It's also possible it's referring to being over sensitive, like too sensitive. And one last thing to consider would be, I think of the Page of Cups as a dreamer, right? So it may not be that there's an actual relationship coming. It could be that you are dreaming very hard of having a relationship, which is different than saying it exists in reality. Next, 5 swords. So, on the one hand, this card can indicate a situation where there's been a conflict, a fight, a quarrel of some kind, and someone has won. But it's a kind of Pyrrhic victory, meaning they won, but was it worth it? Like, good job. Great, you won. Are you happy now? You've totally alienated these other people, overpowered them, and now you're all alone with a bunch of swords or weapons or words, we might even say. Another way, though, of interpreting this card, if we think of it, I will sometimes think of it in terms of a breakthrough. Because if we consider that 4, the number before 5, obviously, is a number of stability, structure, and maybe even boredom, where like things aren't changing anymore. They have settled down. Five is the number that comes right after that, indicating there's a breakthrough, there's a change, there's an overcoming. What was stable and maybe boring, now things are stirred up, things are new, things are different. That might involve a conflict, certainly, we would consider with the Suit of Swords, but it's also the only way you get beyond the four to the higher numbers in the suit, right? So let's see what the next card. Well, unfortunately, probably it's more swords, eight of them, in fact. And here we see a figure tied to a tree and surrounded by a bunch of swords. She's also blindfolded and looking down. She looks to be trapped, and in some versions of this card, it is really clear that because of the placement of the swords around her, she could, if she would only try, she could free herself by cutting the ropes that bind her using one of the swords. Here in this particular image, that is less obvious to me because of the presence of this tree that she's tied to. I'm not really sure that she can move in such a way as to use the swords to free herself. So she really seems to be, well, stuck, I think. However, the swords may indicate that it is all in her mind, or some portion of it is in her mind as opposed to being present in reality. I think we also get a sense of that with the blindfold. There's something perhaps that she is not seeing. I noticed too, the progression from five swords to eight does suggest that they are increasing. So an increase of swords would suggest an increase of conflict, an increase perhaps of harsh words or harsh communication of some kind. It could also signal overthinking, an increase of thoughts, as opposed to feelings or being grounded or even passions that we would see with wands. So maybe there's too much thinking happening, right? There's a dream and a desire for a relationship. I don't see yet, we'll look at the other cards, of course. I don't see, though, the beginning of a relationship. What I see is someone who wants a relationship and is self-sabotaging, who's overthinking it, who's maybe not getting out in the world, who's maybe alienating themselves from other people, not deliberately, probably, um, but it's happening. And so they're ending up by themselves, alone, right? So let's look at some other cards and see what they can tell us. So what is between the Page of Cups and the Five of Swords? It's another eight, this time the wands, eight wands. Well, this would indicate great movement, passion, perhaps travel. Interesting. Let's see what's under it. It's another page, but it's a Page of Swords. So I'm trying to figure out what this card is doing. The Page of Swords makes perfect sense to me. There's two ways of reading it. One is these are the same person, you. You have a dream and you want to start a new relationship, but that's sort of on the inside. On the outside, you're the Page of Swords, walking around, polishing your sword everywhere. You've got a shield, So you're defensive, and it looks like you hurt somebody. And so you are not helping to attract potential partners when you're walking around with this big scary sword and shield instead of um, an easel and paintbrushes and paints, which represent something I think more appealing and inviting, right? Another way of interpreting this would be to think of these as two people. And if we were to read it that way, we would indeed, I think, given the context of the question, have a couple, right? But they're not looking at each other, are they? Page is looking to the left. Page of Cups is looking left. Page of Swords to the right. So they're going through some kind of conflict, right? We know that, given that the Five of Swords is in the center. One of the two of you has done something to hurt the other, and the other is like going off with their friend, hurt, right? And whoever has done the hurting is not totally justified. It's probably the Page of Swords, whoever that's going to be, is not totally justified. They took things too far. Somebody took things too far. Now, this 8, what role does it play? Well, I think of wands in terms of passions as opposed to feelings, in the sense that they, like, feelings you can just kind of sit with. Passions can happen so quickly that you may not even know it's happened until it's too late, right? And this card is sometimes known as the card of swiftness or movement. And so I think something got the better, probably, of the Page of Swords. Their passion, like maybe they were too quick to anger, like something happened that triggered them. They got angry. Maybe it's jealousy, could be any number of things. The other thing to consider about these two court cards is they're both pages which associates them with the element of earth, right? Pages I associate with earth. So in that sense, they're both kind of inexperienced, probably young. If not actually young, then they have lots of authorities over them. They're not people who can make all of their own decisions, right? They're not totally independent of others, probably. But the Page of Cups is water, and the Page of Swords would be air, right? So we've got airiness, someone who tends to be very reasonable, rational, intellectual, probably calm, at least on the outside, although underneath, maybe we've got some pretty big passions flying through the air. This is someone who is looking for an intellectual equal or an intellectual sparring partner. This is somebody who really likes to have intense conversations that might be very kind of theoretical in nature as opposed to practical. This person is very interested in details. The Page of Cups is very different than that. This person is much more about their feelings, their heart, than their mind. And they're much more intuitive, meaning they're less interested in details and more interested in big picture kind of stuff, right? And so this is a conflict that these two might have, right? Like the Page of Cups might be the sort of person who's like, I don't know, like if you were planning a day together, the Page of Cups would probably be more like, oh, I don't know, let's go with the flow. It's water, right? So let's go with the flow and see what happens. And the Page of Swords might be more like, well, but here are all the things that could go wrong with that. So what we really need to do is plan out what time we're getting up and where we're going to go first because it might rain. And so we have to go to this place before we go to that place. And you get the idea, right? And so this could create a conflict or an argument between these two people just because they have different perspectives um, on like how they are interacting with the world. Different personalities is all I'm trying to say. Okay, so what comes between the Five of Swords and the Eight of Swords? Ace of Coins. Well, this could have to do with money, of course, but it could also have to do with the body. It could have to do with values. Maybe these people are finding that they have different values or that they value different things. And that is increasing the conflict, or that is leading to a situation where one of them is ending up alone. The Magician. Okay. So this tells a story about someone being tricky with money. Or if not money, um, with their with whatever's valuable to them. Time, energy, money, or something you value, like somebody who says like, I believe this thing, and then you find out later that's not true. They don't believe that thing. They were just telling you that because they thought it's what you wanted to hear. So this could be a tricky situation where someone is not being truthful or totally truthful about money, or they say like, I don't have time to do that with you, and you find out they did. They just chose to do something else and they didn't want to tell you about it. Or like they something they're something one of these people is doing, probably the Page of Swords, just because I'm connecting swords to swords to swords, is they're not being 100% truthful, right? They're able to, a magician can create illusions that trick people, right? They can be very wonderful, pleasurable illusions and very useful, but they can also hurt people when people find out that it's not true. Of course, the magician also doesn't see everything. They're number one of the major arcana. They're at the beginning. They still have a really long way to go themselves, as indeed both of the pages do. So they can, they're fallible, right? Okay, let's see what these give us. 6 coins. Interesting to see more coins. And so we've got 6 coins turning into 1 coin. This is pretty clearly indicating to me a situation where one person is giving generously to the other or others, because we had 3 there and 3 there. They're giving of their resources to someone who is being tricky with them, is maybe mishandling them in some way. Okay, well, we tried. So 3 swords, and we get the heart here in this version of the card. So I unfortunately, I do see like a heartbreak situation with this particular scenario. I These 3 cards had a lot of promise and optimism, and it doesn't work out, unfortunately, which doesn't mean that it's not fun for a time. So these 8 wands, wands I think can be really fun. Okay, cups can be very fulfilling, and sometimes are also very fun, right? Um, I think wands can be really fun too, right? So like for a time, I can see this as a situation where they're very this new person who you get involved with is passionate, exciting, social. They're intellectual. If you're the page of cups, I suppose if you're the page of swords, then the partner would be very intuitive, emotional, in touch with their feelings, very creative, almost certainly, maybe even an artist. Um, and between you, there's this very fiery passion, and maybe you travel together and you have a very good time and you go out. But I think it's going to not last. It moves very quickly, it burns out, and there is likely to be some kind of conflict, probably involving some resource, money, energy, values, time. And one of you is going to end up hurting the other one over something having to do with the giving and receiving of this resource. Someone is not totally honest, maybe a little tricky, or at least perceived that way by the other, and so the relationship, I think, will not make it. We end up in the last card with the Eight of Swords, so we've got one where I don't know where the other person has gone. I suppose it could be the Magician. Maybe these two, that's probably what it is, right? They're mirroring each other. The Page of Cups and Swords turn out to be the Magician, and the figure on the Eight of Swords. So that doesn't necessarily mean don't go into the relationship, because I think these Eight Wands could be really fun for a while, okay? But just limit your expectations, right? Like set your expectations and be careful about over investing in this relationship, because I think if you give too much, don't give nothing, right? Be open, because remember, this is not set in stone. All of this could change, right? And even the fact of your watching the reading can change it, or listening to the reading can change it. Okay, I'm going to end it there. I think I've probably said enough about these cards. If you see something here that I'm not pointing out and it stands out to you, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear it. If you got a new perspective or something different on your situation out of this, please like and subscribe and let me know. And I will see you in your next reading. Hello, group 2, and welcome to your reading. You chose Terra Volatile and the 6th card of the Major Arcana in this deck known as the Crossroads as your significator. I have shuffled all of the cards back into the deck, and now I'm going to continue shuffling while I think about the question and the card that you chose. So, the question is, what's next for you in your love life? And given that you chose the Crossroads card, it could mean you feel like you have a big choice that you need to make. Like you don't know which path to take forward, and you're trying to decide. It's also possible, the 6th card of the Major Arcana is often the Lovers, and there is a Lovers card for Terra Volatile. It's just that at the moment, it's not in this deck. Instead, I've got the Crossroads there. And in the Lovers card, we think of someone who is already in a relationship of some kind. Might be new, might be just a crush kind of a thing, could be long-term. So I also wonder if you are here because you're already in a relationship and trying to decide, Like, are you at a crossroads in that relationship and you're trying to figure out what to do about it? That's something else that might come up in this reading. Okay, so let me finish shuffling. That's plenty. All right, I'll lay these out and let's see what we get. Okay, here we go. The King of Coins. This may represent you. It could represent another person in your current or upcoming love life situation. But we have, of course, a figure seated on a throne, facing to the left, the past, although looking sort of at the present. They're holding a very large coin representing something they've invested a lot of resources in, something that they value, that's important. The King of Coins tends to be someone who is very stable, secure, can be very generous, likes to be comfortable, likes to belong, doesn't ever want to feel like an outcast generally, and who tends to trust authority of some kind. Like when they're trying to make a decision, a pentacles or a coins person is likely to think like, well, what do the established authorities have to say on this subject? And that would greatly impact their decision making. All right, so we've got a court card. What else? 8 swords. This came up in the previous reading too, although in the previous reading it was over here. 8 swords. So the figure here is facing the past again, as was the figure on the Crossroads card. Here they're blindfolded. And I know the card is kind of dark, but their hands are tied together. All of these swords that are in the ground could be used to cut the ties if this figure were able to see that. Behind them, there is a fortress up on a hill. And there may be, let me just see. So there's, this would, I think, represent like the home, right? A home situation that they are cast out of. No longer like it's in their life, but they're the comfort, the structure of comfort and safety is behind them as they're looking to the past. Okay, what do we have here? 3 coins. This represents collaborating with others, working to produce something valuable, a product of some kind, something practical, in other words, something that can contribute to our well-being in a material sense. So the first thing I notice is a movement from being alone to now being with others. Whether this is a relationship or not, we'll have to see from the other cards, because this 3 of coins usually represents more than just one person, like more than just a couple. And And it's a very practical relationship. It's coins, right? It could be a physical relationship, although I might want some wands there to indicate some like passion, right? But we don't have cups is what I'm trying to get at. What we do have is a movement from one big coin, right, to three smaller coins, as though the the king is, through whatever's happening here, eventually able to like invest in other people, right? Like split up, not hoard their resources, but give them out and work with others um, to build something more. Okay, which could be a relationship, right? But if it is a relationship, I think it would be a very down to earth, practical, convenient kind of relationship as opposed to like a soulmate kind of situation. Let's see what connects the King of Coins with the Eight of Swords. Oh, it's the Queen of Swords. So we do have a relationship. Almost certainly got a king and a queen, right? And these can, of course, be people of any gender. One of them more down to earth, practical, stable, secure. The other more intellectual. Uh, she's probably actually pretty comfortable being on her own and doesn't feel like she needs a relationship. She might not mind being in a relationship, but she's very independent, is what I'm getting at. She is very good at making judgments, but can be overly critical, and that can cause her problems in her relationships. And she prefers someone who will, number one, be an intellectual equal, like a sparring partner, someone that she can have detailed, long, theoretical, or philosophical conversations with, like a lot of what if kind of scenarios. Like she might be a lawyer, even, who's very interested in the details of things. The King of Coins is likely someone who is more grounded and interested in feelings and more of an intuitive, big picture kind of person. Um, so these two, there are quite a few conflicts that would come up between these two, and we can see that because Earth, air, right? One above, one below, and that will cause trouble in their relationship. We've also got fire and water, right? King fire, queen water, and so these two people are their personalities sort of clash in every possible way, in just about every possible way. So, what's under the Queen of Swords? The Emperor. So, this makes me think that there is a kind of battle for control happening. These three cards together make me think like the king and the queen are both want to be the emperor, and the conflicts that arise because of the difference in their personalities makes each one of them think that they have a better way of doing things, a better solution to whatever problems come up, a better way of planning things out, and both of them want to be in charge, and that's creating conflict. They're getting defensive. The center of the whole thing is this like feeling stuck because there's a constant sort of battle for control happening between them. What connects the Eight of Swords to the Three of Coins? Oh, Two Cups. So, even though underneath it all there is very much a conflict of personalities and a battle for control, they really do feel something for each other. Underneath all of that, they may be able to overcome it and find something fulfilling in each other, form a partnership that can be long lasting. This is only a two in the Two of Cups, but if you think of where the Suit of Cups ends with the 10, um, that's a very long term relationship. So they're at the beginning of it, but the Two of Cups specifically is saying there is potential here that this could grow, and does make me think, like, if these two people have this, like, the first sprouts or the first buds of something that really seems fulfilling to them, there are some practical ways that they could work together to get their values on the same page despite the great conflict in their personalities. And maybe one way of doing that would be to consider whether or not they should be trying to create a relationship in which one person is the emperor, or whether it should be more like a mutual pairing of people. Because the emperor, while commanding, is alone, at least in the image. We know there's an empress in the deck, but unless she shows up in one of these cards, that emperor's alone. Underneath the Two of Cups, we have the Knight of Swords. The Knight of Swords. So it's another court card. Heir of Air. There are a couple ways for me to interpret this. One way would be to think that the Queen of Swords becomes the Knight of Swords because they share a suit, right? And so maybe the Queen needs to get off of her throne and get onto her horse. Maybe up on her throne, she's a little too judgmental or too critical. And if she were to climb down from the throne and get on the horse, she'd be like a little bit closer to the earth where the king is, although the horse does have wings. And I don't see earth. Isn't this water? I think so. So, another way of thinking about this Knight of Swords is that it's a third person. It could be a third person, and that would be corroborated by the appearance of the Three of Coins. We've got two people, and then we can see clearly a third hand over here. So, maybe this makes more sense. The Knight of Swords is someone who can swiftly come in with some ideas about how to help these two people build their relationship together, right? So that would make me think that it's like a counselor of some kind. I don't usually think of the Knight of Swords as a counselor, but I do think of the Knight of Swords as someone who is um, learned, very educated, right? Or at least on the progress towards education, taking action towards educating themselves, improving their ideas, and who can follow what they believe in, right? Like has like a theoretical framework or a set of ideas or I don't know, like love languages or something like that that they can take action on and give to others. And they're very passionate about, even fanatical about. And maybe that's what these people need, is for a third party like the Knight of Swords to come in and mediate and help them build practically, in a practical, sort of ordinary, everyday way, like um, a relationship. Okay, let's look at the last two cards. Above the Eight of Swords, we have fertility, which is the Empress. And I just saying, like, that Empress isn't going to show up. We're never going to see her. The Emperor's all alone. No, here she is. So, they need to rule together. If they're trying at any point to both be the emperor, they need to give that up. One needs to be the emperor, and the other needs to be fertility in the sense of like the creative person who's represented in many other decks by the Empress, right? So, in a sense, I would say it's like this couple, they need to grow up a little bit, right? They think they're a king and a queen, but what they really need to be is an emperor and an empress. So they both have some evolving that they need to do. And I think the Knight of Swords is the one who's going to be able to help them to do that, to help them to form a better partnership instead of competing for power. Oh, and the Knight of Coins. This is so crazy. King of Coins, Knight of Coins. Queen of Swords, Knight of Swords. King of Coins, Emperor. Queen of Swords, Empress slash Fertility. Coming together in a partnership, an equal partnership to build, to create something of value. So I'm going to revise again what I've just said. They think they're king and queen, and that their job is to become emperor and empress. But actually, they're both going to be happier if they're just knights. I think they maybe both need to learn to give some things up, to give up their constant need of feeling like they need to be improving and in control and disciplined and taking care of others all the time. And they need to sort of go back to basics. Or not basics, because that would be the page, but if they can find a way to almost go back in time, right? Not actually, but remember what it used to be like, right? Like, remember, if the king can remember what his personality was like before he had a big, comfortable throne and a giant coin, when he was riding around on horseback and facing forward, right? Instead of looking back and exploring more. And if the queen could think back to when she, instead of sitting on her throne, maybe with a severed head attached to her left arm, when she was riding on her Pegasus. And that seems very exciting. And I think that's what's happening is that over time, the conflict between these two personalities is getting them stuck in a rut, right? Here's our Eight of Swords. So the whole energy around the whole relationship is a feeling of being blindfolded and stuck and unable to move forward. And the solution to that is probably not to just keep going in the same direction and be an emperor and an empress or fertility. I think the answer to that is to try and go back, pare down, remember how you used to be, uh, both of you, right? Go back to that. And that will be the way that you're able, in a practical sense, to like go back to what it was like when you first met. I think of the Two of Cups as this is the first meeting between these two people, right? The Ace is the idea of a new relationship, and then the Two of Cups is when they meet for the first time. So remembering that, going back to it, that will be the trick to like creating an everyday ordinary life together that actually works collaboratively, as opposed to the conflicts I think that we see between these personalities. There may be an argument involved, and I say that because here they're not really looking at each other. She is looking in his direction, but he's looking back. Here they're mismatched, right? The Empress is looking that way, the Emperor is here, but they're not seeing eye to eye. Here they're starting to see eye to eye. She's a little above him, but they're coming at each other, but it does seem like maybe in conflict, like she's got her sword raised. He doesn't have a weapon, but he's got this coin, and I'm not sure what he's planning to do with it. But so this could represent conflict or a fight, but it seems to grow into an equal meeting of minds, a partnership that can grow, that can be built upon, right? Okay, I'm going to end it there. If you see something in this spread that I didn't and you would like to point that out to me, I'd love to hear about it. Put it in the comments below. And please consider liking and subscribing if you got something out of this. That will help encourage me to continue to make these videos. Thank you so much, and I will see you in your next reading. Hello, Group 3, and welcome to your reading. You chose Tarocchi by Mr. Friborg and the Justice card as your significator. I have shuffled the entire deck together many times. I will continue shuffling now while I think about the question and its relationship to justice, your significator. The question, of course, that we're working with today is what's next for you in your love life? And given that you chose justice, I have some thoughts about where you might be now and things to think about going forward. So first of all, justice is making a decision, right? The figure of justice is discerning and is trying to decide something, right? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should someone else do this or that? It can also, if it's not a decision, it can be more like a judgment, like, is this person like this or that? Like maybe you're trying to decide, could I have a relationship with that person? Or does that person like me? If I were to like ask them out, would that go somewhere or not, right? Justice can be very sharp and critical. We know this because justice carries a sword, and swords cut, don't they? So much like, the Queen of Swords, who appeared in a previous reading today, we have to be careful with justice of being overly critical. So that might be something else to consider. If you're thinking about your love life, is there any possibility that you or a partner could be overly critical, right? Thinking about things in like too intensely, perhaps. Okay, so those are some ideas that I have going into this. Let's stop shuffling. I think this is enough. And let's see what we get. One other thing I suppose to add as I'm thinking about justice is justice uses their mind more than their heart. Justice doesn't decide or act based on emotions or passions. They look at evidence. They use their mind, their reason, their intellect. That's how they make decisions, which can be great. But if we're talking about a relationship, someone who exclusively bases their relationships on the intellect is going to miss out a lot on, well, what makes relationships so special, right? Which is usually the heart. Although certainly the passions and the body play a role too. Okay, so here are our cards for the spread. Let's see what they tell us. Something new. I just think this card is so incredibly beautiful. So this is something new, and it's something new in a material sense, like it could be a new relationship, although if it's a relationship, it's probably one of convenience, practicality, maybe a relationship based more on the body. I say that because it's coins, although I would maybe want to see some wands there too to indicate some passion around it. But like if this is a relationship, it's someone who it's practical because it's just like someone you run into frequently that's maybe a part of your friend group, or that maybe you work with, right? Because if we think about money changing hands, then we would be thinking about a work kind of situation. Okay, a Knight of Cups. Well, this is our Knight in Shining Armor. This is the most romantic card in the deck. So that is fun to see in a relationship or love reading. But we do also need to watch out for this person because they do not always follow through. They can get lost in fantasies. They can be egotistical sometimes, but they are very romantic and very attractive for that reason. They can be the sort of person who will tell you what you want to hear. They can avoid conflict, even when conflict might be necessary for growth. And those are all things that you should watch out for. But I tell you, dating this person could be really a very good time. You would just need to watch out for some things. Whoa, 9 coins from 1 to 9. From 1 to 9. So very fast increase in resources, time, money, energy, values. The other thing I do consider is when we look at the 9 of coins, there are 8 coins that uniformly look a certain way, and they're stacked and they're organized in a specific way. And then there's 1 coin alone, I have to say it, isolated by these little lines, right? Isolated in the center. So looking at this, I would say, like, this is a romantic fling at work that ends up with you being single again. That is the first. And if it's not at work, it's like some practical way, as I said earlier. I just think work because I see coins, right? Like a job. But someone comes along, like maybe it's someone you work with or a client or a customer or something, and they walk in one day and they're they make eyes at you, they're very romantic, and you go out and you have a great time and it's very fulfilling, but this person is watery and airy because they're a Knight of Cups, and so they're not stable. It's not going to last. They don't stick around. But hey, it was a really good time while it lasted. You just have to manage expectations with that kind of thing. 6 coins. So again, the coins are coming up. It's the six I think of as expansion, right? Like expansion of coins. So like getting a bunch of money, earning a bunch of money. Maybe this is a client who paid you a bunch of money, and then you go out with them for a while afterwards. Which generally I would say, like, don't mix business and pleasure like that. You can really get in trouble with it. But that so far is the kind of thing I'm seeing. Another way to think of it would be, if we're thinking in a practical sense, coins are something that is exchanged. What is exchanged? Also, will we exchange ideas? So this could be like studying, right? Like if it's at school, maybe you're expanding your minds together, and that turns into a fling. Oh, and then here with the Hierophant or Pope, I do think of an institution that is created for the purpose of passing down beliefs or knowledge, and so I do think maybe a school, or like a university, right? Uh, but it could be any kind of institution in which someone is in charge. Like it could be like a company too. Any kind of institution where one person is in charge and everybody else is looking up to that person to say, like, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to think? What are we supposed to believe? You teach us, you show us what we're supposed to believe. And so any institution or like sense of conventionality um, would would apply here to the fifth card of the major arcana. There are some more details in here that may be relevant, but let's look at the other cards and then come back to them because they may not be. So between the Knight of Cups and the 9 coins, we have the Hermit. Yeah. So going off alone. Something else I didn't consider a moment ago, but is now very much coming to mind, is you could be the Knight of Cups too, right? It's possible that the Knight of Cups isn't the next person you'll be in a relationship with, but it's actually you. You are the very romantic one. You are the one who feels things deeply and is trying to find a relationship, perhaps in a work or school setting where you're expanding your minds or your money. But the Hermit is saying, well, the Hermit's alone, right? Maybe you're craving a relationship, but you're just finding that you're very lonely. And the other thing this could be, are you working too much? Maybe like at the core of everything, what you really want is a romance, but you've got your coin and you're turning into 6, and you're taking those 6 and you're turning them into 9. And so you are alone because you're working all the time. That would be something else to consider. Underneath the Hermit, we have the Page of Coins. So, 2 ways to read this. These 2 court cards, I mean, these could be 2 aspects of your personality, or these could be 2 people. If they're 2 aspects of your personality, we might say that at the center of everything, you're this romantic type looking for a relationship. But underneath and to the side of that, the reason why you're lonely is because you're working all the time, right? That's what the Page of Coins is doing. They're starting out on on a practical, like a work, like a job, or studying or something. So you're working or studying all the time, and that doesn't leave you time. You sure are getting a lot of coins though, and that's great, but it's leaving you lonely, and you're neglecting another part of your personality, and maybe a more central part of your personality, maybe in order to keep this person happy. Uh, the other possibility is that these are two people, one of them the romantic, and the other the studious, hard worker. And they have a fling, but it doesn't last because the page of coins is very fascinated by their coins, and the cup just isn't enough to draw them away from those beautiful, beautiful coins, and so they end up single, right? Still single. Greatly motivated to keep getting those coins, but single nonetheless. All right, above the knight, 3 batons. 3 batons above the knight. So here I think of taking action for what you are passionate about, growing, expressing what you are passionate about, but it doesn't seem to last, right? Like, another way of thinking about this would be like if these two are a couple or a potential couple, there's a kind of spark, right? Three lit batons, like a relationship that lasts for 3 weeks or 3 months, that kind of thing. But is still kind of a fling. It's not going to last a long time into the future. And underneath, 5 swords. So there may be some betrayal, actual betrayal, or just feelings of betrayal that happen, kind of breakthrough that happens. That is probably thorny, prickly, uncomfortable. A breakup would be another way to put it. So I think that this is representing, as I've said a couple times, probably a short term relationship that might be very romantic, that might distract for a while from the relentless pursuit of whatever these coins are representing. So it might be a nice break from that, but I don't think it's going to last forever. It's probably going to be a passionate thing that lasts for a period of time, and it might be the kind of thing you could really get a lot out of, but only temporarily. So, something to reflect on. Coins reflect light too, so I can't help but think um, something to reflect on. Oh, and I also am noticing the 5 swords. There's one of these coins. So maybe the conflict that that is breaks up the relationship and that leaves you being the hermit again has to do with coins, right? That's so interesting because we on the 5 of swords there usually isn't a coin also, but here we've got one. Here's a coin, and it almost looks like the page is taking the coin and putting it there, like laying it out, and that's where like maybe the Knight of Cups is fed up with like all of these coins. Coins. They seem to be all over the place, and maybe it's just they can't handle it. So something to reflect on, as I was saying, would be, are these coins as valuable to you as they seem to be, or as you thought that they were? That would be something to consider. I noticed the page is facing to the past, the hermit to the future. So looking back on all the coins you've amassed, But then going forward, oh, there's just more coins? That's it? There's just more coins. And is that going to be enough? Is that going to be fulfilling for you? Okay, that's gonna end it here. If you saw something in this spread that I didn't discuss and that you would like to point out, I would very much appreciate it. Please consider putting that in the comments below. If you got something out of this, please consider liking and subscribing. Let me know so that I will be motivated to continue making these videos. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in your next reading.